Presidential Secretariat, Dr. Roger Luncheon, will bring you highlights on a number of matters Cabinet wishes to bring to the public's attention through you, the media, coming out of its Tuesday, the 21st of April 2015 meeting, after which we will be opening up for questions, and this morning, regrettably, only on questions on Dr. Luncheon's opening presentation will be allowed. I'll hand you over to Dr. Luncheon.
Thank you, Kwame, and good morning again, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Let me also apologize for a late start, and also the forced restriction to the post-opening statement presentation to questions, clarifications, and comments on only the opening statement. Arising from the latest cabinet meeting held on Tuesday, the 21st of April 2015, these matters I would be bringing to your attention and to the public's. As usual, contracts. These are contracts for which Cabinet granted its no objections to the awards, and then the commissioning activities, they continue. The Civil Defense Commission, alternate Emergency Operating Center, Temeri, drought relief update. This is on Region 9, that you are aware is in the throes of drought conditions. And then the militarization in the body politic, an additional perspective. As is common, allow me to start with the contracts and to inform you of the two contracts for which Cabinet granted its no objections. The first was in the health sector, and it dealt with the procurement of pharmaceutical and medical supplies for the Ministry of Health. Pharmaceutical and medical supplies for the Ministry of Health. And that was at a cost of $6,730,000 US. Our mathematicians have estimated that at 1.4 odd billion Guyana dollars. 1.4 odd billion Guyana dollars. Contract for drugs, for pharmaceutical and medical supplies for the Ministry of Health. Then the regional development, the consultancy service, institutional strengthening and capacity building. This is the supervision of works at the Haag-Bosch sanitary landfill site. Supervisory works at the Haag-Bosch sanitary landfill site. As you know, this is in Region 4, and that is at a cost of $250,000 US, $250,000 US, and our mathematicians estimated that at 52.1 odd million Guyana dollars. 52.1 odd million Guyana dollars. Those are the two contracts whose awards were granted no objection by Cabinet at its recent meeting. commissioning event, the Civil Defense Commission and the Alternate Emergency Operating Center. The event, the exercise would take place on Friday, today, 24th of April, 2015, and this would be at Camp Stevenson at Temeri, at the actual site of the alternate EOC. Representing the government would be the National Disaster Coordinator, Dr. Luncheon. The activity would indeed embrace the government of Guyana in its bilateral engagements with its developmental partners, in this case, the U.S. administration and specifically the U.S. Southern Command. The U.S. Southern Command has been responsible for meeting the entire costs of the construction and the equipping of this modern facility, the Alternate Emergency Operating Center. This would serve as a backup to the existing Emergency Operating Center that is located at Camp Ghana Annex, the hatchery right there on Thomas Lands. And I believe that we all know that the floods and its impact on the current site has been more than anything else the major motive, the major cause for the relocation. And because we do not intend to close the original site down, this one, the new one at Temeri, would be seen and treated as an alternate emergency operating center. As I said, the event would take place today, Friday, the 24th of April, and would be addressed by myself and I think the charge, Mr. Brian Hunt of the U.S. Embassy. Drought relief, Region 9. The climate extremes in Western Guyana, and indeed even over the border in northeast Brazil, they continue and manifests itself in the form of markedly reduced rainfall and the ensuing drought conditions. All three of the subregions of Region 9 have been affected, and the Civil Defense Commission has been made responsible for both the assessment of the impact, that's the disaster impact, and the preparation of recommendations. At the Tuesday cabinet meeting, the comprehensive report from the Civil Defense Commission on its findings and recommendations into the situation in Region 9, they were examined by the Cabinet of Guyana. Essentially, the Cabinet approved the recommendations that focused on the provision of water to those affected communities in the 3 sub-regions of Region 9. Fortunately, in many of these communities are the very resources that are needed to facilitate the implementation of the CDC recommendations. That is, the tractors and the trailers. And in most cases, the neighboring water sources. What the CDC has proposed, what the CDC has recommended, what Cabinet has approved funding for is essentially the provision of water from accessible sources to the affected communities and institutions in those communities, schools, health centers, and such like. It essentially ranges from as little as a couple hundred of yards or meters from a water source to, I'm told, as much as 20 miles in some other instances. But the funding has been made available to procure pumps, to procure tanks, and the use of those facilities to transport water from the sources to the communities would be ongoing until the rains come and alleviate the torment that the residents, the householders in those communities, those affected communities, are currently facing. This essentially is an ongoing activity as the Bureau, Hydromet, and our resort to international weather certainly suggests that this is not a short-term event and that this drought-like condition from the weather extremes is likely to continue into May of 2015. Militarization of the body politic, additional perspectives. The flood of reactions, pros and cons, on the issue of the militarization of the body politic, that flood does reflect how real the perception of Guyanese is with regards to the militarization of the body politic. The ongoing discussion in media during the political campaign was also a feature of discussions elsewhere at Cabinet, and here the perspective of the PPPC administration on the matter is worth recording. Essentially, there hasn't been any repudiation that what is claimed is occurring. I repeat, essentially, there hasn't been any repudiation, any rejection, any denial of this development, that there indeed is militarization in the leadership of the PNC, the APNU, and that this development is new. Heretofore, the military, particularly the retired military, and even during the days of the PNC dictatorial administration and party paramountcy, the military was always subordinated, differentiated and subordinated from the political party, from the People's National Congress. That is also indisputable. I don't believe the fact that the Kabaka used to adorn himself in a general's uniform should ever be misconstrued as to how the Kabaka, the then leader, Forbes Lyndon Sampson Burnham, felt and saw the role and the contributions of the military in sustaining the PNC regime. It was a subordinate role to the political arm of the then government and essentially the People's National Congress. Since 1992, the considerable efforts of the PPPC administration has been to restore the Guyanese public appreciation of the professionalism of the Guyana Defense Force. Since 1992, it has been the aim, and it indeed has been a success in the efforts made by this PPP civic administration to restore the confidence of Guyanese people in the professionalism of the GDF. It wasn't an easy task, keeping in mind the many negatives that occurred under the rubric of party paramountcy to which the then military establishment subscribed. The Secretary to the Defense Board, yours truly, is on record from his awareness of this development, recording his objections and his reservations. Obviously, it has fallen on deaf ears. So much so that yesterday, Chief of Staff is today consorting with the opposition. Now I want to point out to you that the engagement between a commander-in-chief and the chief of staff of the military is based on trust. Trust in the exact and current relationship, as well in trust in its historical antecedents. I am totally, I am totally incapable of understanding how a current commander-in-chief, in the face of the reality that evolves today with a most recent departing chief of staff consorting with the opposition, what this portends for the future. Indeed, I can't imagine it being of no impact. And if that is an obvious conclusion that the Secretary to the Defense Board draws, I cannot understand why it is being encouraged. Why immediately after demitting office, enjoying the greatest confidence of the Commander-in-Chief, the situation of a departing Chief of Staff happily ensconced within the ranks of the opposition is a reality the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces have to address. And it's not only that. One now moves into the hypothetical realm. And heaven helps the military. If indeed David Granger, APNU AFC, succeeds in their quest, a militarized leadership transformed into the new government, and what impact it would have on the soldiers, the officers, who now would be discharging their professional obligations under the aegis of a militarized administration, who, when it happened before with lesser military influence, subverted the military, destroyed the careers of many officers in the military as they sought to maintain their embrace of party paramountcy and their oath of allegiance to the party and not to the constitutionally elected government and the state. I'm not going to be the Secretary to the Defense Board forever. And I might immodestly see myself offering to the Guyanese public like others have done in similar situations, words of warning. Words of warning. I don't think that Brigadier David Granger, retired Brigadier Granger, has ever hid his adoration for the works, for the aims, for the policies of Mr. Burnham. And I suspect that we may have him again being given an opportunity. I suspect that he would not abandon those age-old beliefs and preferences. And under those circumstances, all I can say is look out, Guyana. You are going to be in trouble. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the matters I wanted to bring to your attention. And as Kwame has pointed out, time constraints, indeed, have prevented, will prevent answers, questions, clarifications on anything but my opening statement. I deeply apologize, but that is the reality today, the 24th of April, 2015. Thank you.
You mentioned that, related to your last statement, you mentioned that some of the calls and expressions of concerns have fallen on deaf ears. Do you think that the current administration has done such a good job at restoring confidence in the professionalism of the Army that, you know, they don't see this whole militarization as a threat, as you put it?
I have said that we have been successful. Again, being a bit immodest, I would want to recognize personal effort involved. It is not only that the Secretary to the Defense Board was entrusted by the then President in '92, Comrade Chetty, but it goes back historically. Many of those officers who end up being discredited are classmates of mine from the QC Cadet Corps days, my own family, close relatives. I don't believe that I bring, and I'm willing to accept this, I bring maybe a dispassionate interest in this matter. This thing disturbs me immensely, both as an administrator, as the Secretary of the Defense Board, and one who sees the success that we have built over '92 to 2015 being threatened by narrow short-term interests, which I insist again, heavens forbid, if it became the rule, if it became the norm over the next 5 years, it would obviously threaten what we have gained in restoring the confidence of Guyanese in the professionalism of the military.
A quick clarification. My question was that has the administration done such a good job that the Guyanese people are not as attuned to this threat, the issue of a threat?
But my answer to that is simply that in our, maybe it's an error in our thinking, but the idea, the notion of this militarization and the degree of the militarization down to even the current, the immediate past chief of staff consorting with the opposition, I don't believe we prepared the Guyanese people for that. Where in our assessment? This is going back to the PNC days, going back from independence. This development that has obviously chilled my bones. It was totally unexpected. Totally unexpected. That is not part of what we have patiently prepared the Guyanese public. We have not. And I admit that upfront. That development was not part of our conception of the future.
Adam Harris, Prime Minister. Between 1966 and 1992, Guyana was never militarized to the extent that even when there was a change in government, the Army pledged its allegiance to the government. Since then, retired Army officers actually served in a non-military capacity with the government, and there were no objections. So why this fear that there is going to be a militarization when it never happened?
I don't understand the question. Is it that you are attempting to say that statecraft, let us use a current tool, statecraft, that sees military officers, both serving and retired, being given formidable responsibilities in the civilian government? Are you saying that that is comparable to Gary Bess, Ann Collins, and Felix joining the PNC in attacking this government? Is that what you're saying?
I am saying, sir, that military officers have a role in civilian life, and many have served in the ranks of the government. Why the fear if these men choose a role outside of the government, bearing in mind that Guyana has never been militarized? It wasn't between 1966 and 1992, and it hasn't been since.
Well, I would question first this assertion of yours about the lack of militarization. I don't believe that it is really, it accords with the reality. I do remember once the quotation that 1 in 80 or 1 in 83 Guyanese was a member of the security services. I don't believe you can question the role that the military play in the denial of democracy, the prevention of counting votes at the place of poll, their involvement in the corruption of the electoral system between the years of 1966, specifically in those years when they were involved in seizing and stuffing ballots and counting votes in campaign Ghana and places as such. Now, it may not be the same level of militarization, but let's not neglect to accept the impact and the significance. Even if it were just 2 people, the denial and the use to which Burnham put the military then cannot be divorced from the impact of militarization. It cannot be divorced. And so even if you're arguing that that is not militarization and that there wasn't any significant militarization, I will refer you to the impact. I would refer you to the impact of even what you might argue as a little militarization, and I would refer you to the impact and how devastating it was and the way it's been treated historically. My understanding in 1992, when Comrade Chedi entrusted myself and Comrade Feroz as the Minister of Home Affairs with this responsibility of restoring the confidence of the Guyanese people in the military, I think it is a reflection of an assessment by a superb statesman and a nationalist, how injurious had been Burnham's use of the military and its traditions and the way the Guyanese people saw the military. And I insist, we've done a good job. I believe that we've been successful. But this new development is like out of the box.
Dr. Luncheon, Neil Marks, Capital News. Just a clarification first. Are you saying that the current leadership of the Army is concerted with the opposition? I just wanted to get that clear.
I can't understand, Neil, why you ask these absurd questions. You have never heard me say that. If you want me, I could play the tape back instantly.
No, you said the current...
I have never said the current leader. You think I'm going to accuse Mark, my personal friend, of consorting with the opposition?
Hence my clarification.
It's not a clarification. It's a ridiculous question because I didn't say it. You could ask me to clarify, man. What the hell does that mean? I never said it.
Clarify what?
You could ask me an absurd question like that. I have never said that. Why are you asking me to conform or not conform statements I never made?
Okay, Marcel, we're moving on.
So I can ask
Marcel,
my question now.
Okay, please, we don't have time. Marcel, move on, please. We're moving on. Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Luncheon, my questions are twofold. Marcel Thomas, Stabrook News, by the way. My question to you is, what makes 2011 so different to now, when you would have had the same, except for Gary Best, the same military persons in the opposition? And two, I want to know if government believes that should the opposition win, persons' doors would be kicked in. Really, I'm asking if, given global trends, the Arab Spring and all of that, do you believe Guyanese are so docile as to allow for a non-democratic, militaristic rule of any party?
Okay.
I'm not certain I understood your question well, but I would say this. We are engaged here in a discourse about the likely impact. And if one were to go on an extension and argue a point, I don't have any restriction on limiting the excursions. There are those who would feel and imagine on the basis of history and what has been done before that all things are possible. I may want to interject on the basis of what we have done, perhaps like you, that not all things are possible. But are you saying to me, should I be saying to you, that I have some privileged position or knowledge that would preclude anyone from voicing the ranges of opinions about this matter? I don't think so. I think it got to be heard. Certainly, if the past is to be given some consideration on what the future holds, it would allow any amount of prophesying based on history, historical features. If the past is to be relegated to, let us, as some would have us believe, this is an oddity, it is best forgotten. Well, then let's go ahead with what the PPP civic administration was willing to accomplish or did accomplish between 92 to 2015. Let's hold on to that. I would caution, though, that we take a much more enlightened position. And like many people say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
But how can you answer my first question?
What is that?
What is so different from 2011 to now 2015, where you're bringing this up now and you didn't bring it up then?
But
When you have the same people.
No, 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 no. I think you're underestimating significantly. My opening statement, I started by saying, I don't believe that anyone has repudiated the militarization. Am I, like my friend Neil, am I, for clarification purposes, Neil? Where is Neil? Over there, over there? Yeah. Sorry. Nobody's over there, just the box. Yeah. Okay, thank you. For clarification, Marcy, are you saying that you are repudiating that? That indeed there is no militarization? Or are you saying that there is some militarization, but nothing of consequence compared to 2011? Because I don't want to burden you with the facts, but when I show you the details that we currently have about the involvement of retired military in the leadership, not only the rank and file, but in the leadership of APNU AFC coalition, alliance, call it what you will, I think you would have to agree that 2011 is a different kettle, 2015 is a different kettle of fish than 2011. And that is why I started out saying no one has repudiated that, because they know what I know, that I got the information. They know that.